No, Nelson Mandela didn't die in prison. And the Monopoly Man isn't wearing a monocle either. These are 5 of the most widely experienced Mandela Effect examples, even if you don't remember it that way. With so many brands out there competing for our dollars, it's impossible to remember all of them, let alone how they're spelled. There's nothing strange about people misspelling the name of a product, but the fact that so many make the same exact mistakes is a little more interesting. For instance, thousands of people recall eating Jiffy brand peanut butter when they were younger, but a trip to the grocery store will confirm that it's just called Jif. If that applies to you, you're probably mixing it up with Jiffy Lube or Skippy peanut butter or the concept of being back in a Jiffy. As for that semi-edible, rubbery lunch meat that you had for lunch in elementary school, there's a whole song to remind you.
My baloney has a first name, it's O-S-C-A-R. My baloney has a second name, it's...
Pause. How do you spell that second name? Well, it's not with 2 E's, that's for sure.
M-A-Y-E-R.
The commonly remembered spelling errors aren't limited to the kitchen, though. The most famous example of all might just be the Berenstain Bears, who have been tripping up children with their unexpected letter A since 1962. There's never been another rock and roll icon quite like Freddie Mercury. Whether he was singing about not stopping now, someone biting the dust, or wanting to ride his bicycle, the lead singer of Queen was a truly magnetic presence on the mic. It's likely you know a few of his songs by heart, and if your favorite sports team has ever won it all, We Are the Champions is probably one of them. The champions of what, exactly? Of the world, of course. He only mentions it 3 times after all, right? Not exactly. The line only comes up twice in the song, and neither of them happen at the very end. Tons of people swear that the song concludes with one final "of the world," but a quick Google of the official lyrics shows otherwise. If you have to hear it to believe it, go ahead and listen to the song for yourself. It might sound like it ends a little too early, but that's just the way it was recorded. The confusion definitely stems from the reality that each chorus up until the last does indeed end with "of the world," but the final chorus doesn't. There's also the fact that his unforgettable performance of the song at Live Aid very much does end with one final "of the world." It's an understandable mistake to make, but just keep it in mind if you want to nail your next karaoke night. Remember the ending of Moonraker? Sorry, we're probably getting ahead of ourselves. Remember Moonraker? That was the movie in which James Bond went sci-fi, not coincidentally released 2 years after the original Star Wars. It's one of the oddest Bond movies for sure. Roger Moore's 007 gets jazzy in New Orleans, wrestles a giant anaconda, fights a goon with metal teeth, and goes to outer space to meet a supervillain named Drax. Not that one, a different one. One of the most memorable characters in Moonraker is Jaws, the hulking henchman who bites a metal cable in half using his set of steel chompers. Unlike many of the minions that have found themselves facing off against Bond over the years, he actually survives the events of the film. Not only that, but it looks like he's fallen in love with a girl who appreciates his unconventional smile. That's because she has one too. At least, that's how some people remember it. A good amount of those who watched Moonraker years ago remember Jaws' girlfriend having braces on her teeth. After all, it would make sense for 2 individuals with similar oral contraptions to gravitate towards each other, but Moonraker is not a movie that makes sense. Instead, the girl just has big teeth. Is this evidence of an alternate reality that merged with ours? No, it's just an unfortunate missed opportunity. It makes sense that the best-selling board game of all time is about dominating the market and forcing your rivals into bankruptcy. Monopoly has sold millions of copies and has hundreds of themed variants, but the original is especially famous for its bourgeoisie mascot. Mr. Monopoly is the most famous face in tabletop games. You could probably even draw him from memory, with his iconic top hat, mustache, and monocle. The only problem? Mr. Monopoly has no eyewear at all. Ever since his creation in 1936, the Monopoly Man has never felt the need to improve his vision. If you're thinking of a monocled mascot with a top hat to match, it's probably Mr. Peanut of the Planters Company, at least until he was killed and replaced with a baby version of himself.
Where's my monocle?
Maybe you're mixing him up with the Pringles guy too. But guess what? Mr. Pringle doesn't have a monocle either, just a mustache full of potato chip crumbs. To make matters more complex, Mr. Monopoly did appear with a monocle in a 2016 advertisement, perhaps as a cheeky response to the theory. But does it really matter? As far as the games go, Mr. Monopoly doesn't have a monocle and never has. It's been decades since the millennium ended, meaning that there's been plenty of time for our brains to make up details from the Y2K era. Some people have conjured up a non-existent Sinbad movie about a genie called Shazam, a Pikachu with a black-tipped tail, and a hit show called Sex in the City, rather than Sex and the City. However, a particularly infamous example comes from one of the biggest music videos of 2000, Britney Spears' Oops, I Did It Again. Remember that headset that Britney puts on along with that tight red jumpsuit? You shouldn't, because there isn't one. Watch the video in full to see for yourself. Just be prepared for an unreasonable amount of lip gloss. So, where did this idea come from? As HITC explains, folks might be thinking of Britney on stage during live performances as opposed to Britney dancing on Mars. Britney famously wears a headset on stage rather than use a traditional microphone, so it seems that some folks just thought they saw it in the Oops, I Did It Again video. Nevertheless, Twitter, TikTok, and more are abuzz with folks swearing that she wore a headset in the video. Are those people wrong? To quote Britney herself, yeah,